Fathers sacrifice a lot for their families, and now modern society is starting to ask the question if fathers should also sacrifice the tradition of father-daughter dances. Tonight on TMF Debates, in this season 1 finale, Middle Ground, we're going to see if we can find some peace between the old way and the new. Where do you initially stand between pro, who insists that the dance is innocent, and anti, who is certain that the dance has overstayed its welcome? To talk about this debate, we're going to cross the 3 major crossroads. 1. If the dance has any romantic undertones. 2. Who should even be allowed to attend the dance? And 3. What is the purpose of the dance overall? First off, the dance being romantic is largely a claim that is asserted by those on the anti. They provide such evidence as the formal wear, girls wearing makeup, and overall just it being like a couple date-esque situation between a father and a daughter. Those on the pro will come back with that anybody who makes these assertions is just a tad perverted, because while a father and a daughter do love each other, they love each other in a very innocent way, and there's nothing romantic about it. Some people in society choose to use the word love to define sex, romance, and being intimate with another person, while other people define love as just simply caring deeply for somebody else. As you go through this debate, make sure that you talk to whoever you're debating with about their personal definition of love. When anti says that these dances are impure, they tend to be, not always, but they tend to be referring to the religious father-daughter dances, where you will see as such activities as a purity pledge, games that mimic wedding games, and overall the night is just a mock wedding between a father and a daughter. As mentioned in part 1 of this debate, which you can go ahead and check out the ad card now, we talked about how you will find these activities at religious father and daughter dances, but they are seldom going to be found at any school function. Thus, to get through this crossroad, pro is going to have to concede that some father-daughter dances are a tad perverse by modern standards. And to get through this crossroad, anti is going to need to concede that the school father-daughter dances are rarely anything but innocent in intent. Intention matters because the romantic dress argument will always be countered with, well, why are they wearing that? Context will always override the romantic implications for pro, because in this context they almost always give the fathers the benefit of the doubt. That being said, modern context does see the religious father-daughter dances as oppressive and inappropriate for underage girls. If we continue to include the religious father-daughter dances as valid father-daughter dances, we're only going to get distracted talking about religious value rather than intent and purpose. Thus, for us to make any progress forward through this crossroad, both sides are going to need to reject that the religious father-daughter dances are appropriate. And if we can do that, then we can allow ourselves to move forward. As we move to the next crossroad, we want to start discussing why we're talking about this in the first place. Largely, we have these dances because we want to respect the family unit, the father, the daughter, and possibly the mother and brother. To shift into the second crossroad, we want to start talking about the questions surrounding those other family members who should be allowed to attend the dance. According to the US Census, during the 1960 to 2016 period, the percentage of children living with solely their mother nearly tripled from 8% to 23%, and the percentage increase of children living with only their fathers from 1% to 4%. Knowing this, we can understand why so many mothers have been angry at father-daughter dances. There have been multiple accounts online about mothers who have gone to these dances and been turned away at the door, despite their daughter being completely dressed up and waiting to hang out with their friends inside. The exclusion of other family members is primarily why anti is so frustrated with father-daughter dances remaining an exclusive event. In part 1, pro stated how there are other dances that happen throughout the year that are for everyone. Anti is always going to counter back with, yes, those dances do happen, but they don't happen anywhere close to the frequency that father-daughter dances do, nor do they have the same importance. Pro does almost always admit that, yeah, these other dances are less frequent, but they almost always will solidify their stance with talking about what a father-daughter dance symbolizes. It's a period of time that a father gets to show his daughter that she is loved and cared about, and that her time is valuable to him. Pro really does stand by the ideology that fathers should be the best possible male role model for their daughter. Anti agrees with this in theory, but we'll always counter with the reality that there's a lot of deadbeat fathers out there. There's a lot of fathers that don't step up to the plate, and there's a lot of fathers that are subpar role models for their son and their daughter. And a father should always be trying to be the best role model possible, regardless if there's a dance or not. To summarize Antai's defense, fathers should not be cheered on for doing the most simple and basic things that they should be doing by default, day in and day out. To make it through this crossroad, Pro is going to need to concede that mothers and fathers both provide their daughters with irreplaceable love. And Antai is going to need to concede that there is indeed something special about a father-daughter bond, as it has been shown that girls with poor connections to their fathers tend to start their puberty sooner, and we all know the stereotypes surrounding daddy issues. With these concessions, before we continue, I want to talk about stereotypes for a second. One of the main reasons that Antai hates father-daughter dances is because it continues to champion and push this concept that fathers are not the primary parents within their children's lives, thus they need this time carved out for them. The stereotype of fathers being depicted as incapable can be seen across all forms of media, from fathers being incapable of cooking, cleaning, or taking care of just the basic needs of children, leaving the mothers to be depicted as the capable ones. This depiction infuriates Antai, as they don't think we should champion fathers over mothers, and if we should champion anyone, it should be both of them equally. Pro will almost always counter with, well, fathers are still depicted as the breadwinners, and thus they're more likely to subconsciously push themselves further to make more money to provide for their family and thus have less time for their children. While this stereotype definitely does still persist, if we look at the data, women and mothers tend to be catching up, in some cases surpassing men and fathers as the breadwinner. However, Pro largely still remains unconvinced that getting rid of this tradition for little girls and their fathers will do anything more than just demonize the fathers. Perhaps there is a solution in talking about the purpose of these dances for our final crossroad. Both sides are adamant that these dances are about honoring the family, but they morally disagree about how we should go about doing that. As we move into this crossroad, Pro will be proclaiming that there's nothing but innocent intent in loving a family, and Antai is going to be yelling about corruption on a plethora of levels. To talk about the purpose of these dances, I want to take a brief look at the more traditional father-daughter dances, the ones that happen at the wedding. Traditionally, these dances were the last moments that a dad had with his daughter before giving her away to her new husband, usually as a trade deal or a political arrangement in centuries past. However, these dances still persist and are seen as innocent. No one ever questions either of the parent-child dance, so why are the school dances so harshly attacked? During my research, I could only deduce that the reasons to attack them beyond the exclusion that we just covered was primarily just because of the ages involved. And yes, that sounds obvious, but think about it this way. The wedding dance is involving two adults, two consenting adults, while the school or church event involves an older male and a younger female. And we tend to fall victim to sexualizing this relationship because subconsciously or not, it's hard for our society to see the older man, younger girl relationship as anything more than questionable, even if it is a father and daughter. That is why the religious father-daughter dances are seen as perverted by modern standards. And the debate is going to shift into Antai talking about how these dances, the purpose of them is to rear girls into a certain way of life, while Pro is going to talk about the purpose that it's innocent for fathers to teach their children life lessons. If Antai continues to believe that the school dances are perverted and only used to mold girls into the princesses society expects them to be, the debate is over. For Pro to keep Antai in the debate, they're going to want to talk about their defenses using the neutral terms of parent and child. And for Antai to stay in, they're going to need to remember their first concession that school dances are not the perverted ones that we find in the religious father-daughter dances. If both sides can agree to this innocent intent of school dances, then we can start talking about a middle ground. The middle ground that I have come up with changes the name to family dances. You invite everyone, you keep the attire the same, and you just simply remove all of the wedding games and allow everyone to attend. However, this middle ground heavily leans into Antai, and so it's not going to be acceptable to some Pro. But remember, in all win-win situations, you have to concede something. So if we were to have Antai to concede a little bit more and give back to Pro, that middle ground will look like keeping the dances called father and daughter dances, changing the attire to just costumes, saving the formal wear for weddings, removing all wedding games, and allowing anyone to attend, but keeping the name the same, or also hosting a mother-son dance at the exact same time. This is a win-win, strictly speaking, in our secular society. It is a win for pro because we keep the name, thus encouraging fathers to take the essential time for their daughters. And it is a win for anti because the formal wear is completely removed and thus no romantic undertones are there and the entire family can attend. What do you think though? Do you agree with my middle ground? Or do you think that it still leans too much in the favor of anti? Whatever you think, whether you're on the pro, whether you're on the anti, somewhere in the middle, please join the debate in the comment section down below. And I can't wait to talk to you about it down there. Thank you very much for watching this season 1 finale. Whew, it's been quite the adventure. And now, let's wrap this season up. Hit subscribe and then hit the notification bell to make sure you're back here in a few weeks when we release a video about season 2 and all the changes that we're going to be making. And a huge shout out to my Patreon members for being with me the entire way to help bring safe debates to you and everyone you disagree with. As always, this has been TMF, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the time in whatever zone you find yourself. Doodles!